What does having it all mean, and is there a template?
What you think the idea of women having it all actually means, and sort of where you would approach this topic.
Thank you for reading my LinkedIn posts. I thought it was just my husband clicking and liking my stuff. So,
I like them all the time. Come on.
Thank you. For me, I guess twofold, right? Professionally, I work with mostly people on relational issues. So I'm a couples therapist. I see a lot of married couples. I also see a lot of individuals who are in their 30s, 40s, and especially for women, but also for their male partners, right, in straight relationships. This is a time when we're simultaneously building out our careers, right? For many of us, our income, our prestige, our job title, the trajectory kind of peaks depending on the industry, but you're kind of there, you're peaking in your late 40s and early 50s. But biologically and socially, we're also peaking our family life in the 30s and 40s. So this is where couples run into issues. Individually, we maybe have career aspirations and we don't know how to time that with our family and personal life aspirations. So that's the angle I come from professionally. What does having it all mean? And is there a template? Because, previously we had a template where women were supposed to be in a domestic role, and then we had the feminist revolution. So now it's like, oh, you can have everything else. But what does everything else actually mean? Personally, I struggled with this too. Growing up as the only child in a secular and very, reform and rapidly changing society in China, I was told to, get it all, right? Be as good as the boys, but still be a good Chinese girl. And all of those messages, frankly, I found very overwhelming. And then coming to age 34 and getting a diagnosis of infertility and having always known that I wanted a big family, then I struggled through my 30s and 40s. So I'm very excited to hear, what everybody else has to say on this topic tonight.
You posted something on LinkedIn the other day saying that a majority, it was like 60 to 70% of relationship issues are unsolvable. So could you talk a bit about the relationship between how people will experience growing up with the other gender, with female figures in their life, and then going into the workplace, also the expectations that's putting on women?
Maybe two statistics to share. So the 60 to 70% that you quoted is based on research conducted by the Gottman Institute. So they're kind of the world's foremost thinkers and researchers on couples and relational issues. The statistic is that 2/3 of your conflicts with your spouse, with your partner, are unsolvable. You just have fundamentally different values. So what do you do with that, right? And many couples have this problem where it's like, oh, we keep having the same fight over and over again. So that's one statistic. The other one relating to having it all is that some 70% of marriages suffer a precipitous decline in marital satisfaction after the birth of a child. And some percentage of that, majority, actually never make it out. And what I see with couples in their 30s, 40s, up to 70s, right, my oldest couples clients, the issue often goes back. The original genesis of the issue was, oh, when I was having the first baby, you weren't at the hospital, or, you didn't give me comfort. And the husband, for his part, also is like, well, you cut me out of it all. I felt so alienated from my own child. And the third point, you talk about how do couples relate to the feminine experience of the world. Many years ago in my 20s, I remember reading a study in the Harvard Business Review that talked about how men who have children make better managers than men who don't have children. And further, men who have daughters make better managers than men who have sons. And now, as a mother to 4 children, married to, a blokey bloke, it's so true, because when you have a vested interest in the life of a child, of a girl, right, in your case, your daughter, that empathy lens is just so much stronger. You can kind of coast through life as a single guy without thinking too much. When you marry, you start thinking a bit more, but the marital relationship is often antagonistic. It's I'm crazy or you're crazy. I'm right and you're wrong. But it's when you have something that you have created that you want to watch flourish that you really start to experience, both, I think, for women, experiencing the masculine travails of life, and for men, experiencing, okay, what does it mean to really empathize with the feminine experience of the world?
Having it all sometimes can be overwhelming, and as you quite rightly say, it ends up with women doing it all. But for women, is it more a case of what is worth having? If you could talk about some of your experiences, what you feel is actually worth having, and I'm sure it changes from person to person.
I think this is super relevant, especially where we sit in Singapore, in a Confucian society, in an Asian traditional society, where doing the right thing and having the right values is top-down dictated to you, right? I remember in my 20s walking down the street in New York and seeing this, Caucasian American mother talking to like a 3-year-old girl asking, oh, what do you want? And I was like, wow, why is she spending so much time talking to this little child? I had never heard that kind of discourse in my upbringing. And now I realize that it's a bottom-up, right, discovery of what is important to oneself. So in an Asian context, I think many of us spend a lot of time and energy striving for the template of success. Oh, go, for me, and I think, Indian families, Jewish families, traditionally Italian families, many cultures will relate to this. It's go to a good university, first get good grades, go to a good university, get a respectable job. And that doesn't mean, don't be an actor, don't be a writer, don't be a musician. It's be a lawyer, be an engineer, be a doctor, right? These are the respectable jobs. Okay, now get married. You're supposed to have children. And ideally, you're having 2 children, 1 boy, 1 girl. That'll make your grandparents happy. Exactly. So in the post-feminist era where women have the ability to work, we're just packing on more and more things. And the most important thing that I think work with my clients on is you have to first know yourself. What are your intrinsic motivations and your intrinsic values? Not what somebody else told you your whole life, what is important. Only then can you achieve, I think, true feminism, which is choice. I can choose to say I want to be a full-time stay-at-home mother. And as a couple, if we agree on that, that is our template for success. Then we're working on having it all, meaning my husband's going to bring home the money and I'm going to provide the nurturing environment. If my choice is I want to have a thriving career and want to model to my children, whether they're boys or girls, that you can have a partnership where both people work, or I want to have a stay-at-home husband and he's okay with that because he's always wanted to express the nurturing side of his nature. Having it all is too much, but you've got to have it all that's meaningful to you. So first step is to spend the time introspecting on what are your intrinsic motivations. Then you can put your effort towards something that is meaningful. It's a hard slog. And if you're doing it for somebody else, it's not going to work. So to anybody, right, younger women who are asking me, oh, when should I have children? I always ask them, if you're not 150% sure that you want to have children for yourself, don't do it for your husband, don't do it for your parents. None of these people are going to live with you for as long as you're going to live with your own choices.
You might get to the point where you have decided what is worth having to you. How do you then relate to the societal pressures from everyone else?
So if the beginning, as I talked about to your last question, if the beginning of the process is introspection and understanding your intrinsic values and the 1, 2, 3 things like you highlighted that are worth putting your time into, the next step of the process is kind of unbrainwashing yourself, right? Because most of us, maybe we spend 30, 25, 35 years hearing the social message, the expectation. Now, if you find that 90% of your mind space is occupied by other people's voices, can you reprogram with more of your own voice, right? Ron talked about CBT earlier, cognitive behavior therapy. You can think of it purely as a numbers game. It's a proportion, right? If 90% of your talk is you're doing the wrong thing, you should do that other thing, talk to yourself. Get your partner on board. Find a friend group that's like your accountability group. And they're saying, no, you're doing the right thing, right? You don't need to marry a doctor because, that doctor is a dick or whatever. Like you can reprogram yourself to believe more firmly in your values. And it won't be perfect, right? Everyone falters. Everyone will have days where we get down on ourselves and say, what have I done all this for? Like, what is the purpose of my life? What have I achieved? I'm 44. I'm not a managing director at Goldman Sachs. Right? But, then you need your own brain to kick in. And when your own brain is faltering, you need your friends, your supporters to kick in and say, hey, remember, these were your values. I have a lot of optimism and faith in the younger generation because in my therapy clientele, when I look at millennials and then the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, like our children's generation, their superpower is self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Our parents' generation, right, the work ethic of the previous generation, their superpower was physical grit and resilience. But we're no longer competing on just suck it up. Right? Our generation was more, we realized that vulnerability as a manager is important. Relational skills are important, even more so for our children's generation. I really think that, if we raise our children right, to listen to themselves, to introspect and to question, why am I doing it all? What is the purpose of this all? That they will be a lot more self-aware than we are and have the tools to create the life that they want. My 4-year-old in the car the other day, her 8-year-old brother was having a moment of frustration. And I just heard her go, Max, you're just angry. It's going to be okay. like, wow, I don't think I've ever heard that spoken by many adults in China, right? In my native language, where we don't talk about feelings that much.
What sacrifices or trade-offs have you seen or experienced?
I love this contrast because you had your kids at 24, I had my first at 35, but my model of parenthood and adulthood was my mother, who had her children, who had me at 25. And what I see now is actually it makes sense to do the woman math. And as a couple, do that math together. Because there will be, if you're a family that wants more than one child, you are realistically looking at a period of 6 to 10 years where the woman is taking maternity leave. She might be hospitalized for pregnancy complications. There are stops in the career. So decide what you want as a couple and decide the optimal timing for that. Nobody's gonna do it perfectly, but you can actually time and have it all in different periods. So what my parents offered me was loving home environment where everybody was present, but what was missing was financial comfort because they were young, they were just starting out. And what I, sacrificed was I couldn't have that dream, like blissful, let's make a baby. I had IVF for all of my children, right? They were created in a lab with a lot of hard work and very contrived timing. And, it wasn't fun. It was emotionally taxing. But by bringing children to this world at our age, my husband and I have given them a more sound financial foundation. And I think we also bring to our parenthood maybe not as much physical time at home, but we give them more self-awareness. We know what we want, and we can impart to them some advice that helps them as they are choosing their partners for life, as they're choosing their studies, their careers. So at any given point in time, if you take a snapshot, there's going to be something missing from your picture. But can we take the long-term view and look at your life, the present value as well as the future value that you bring to your children whenever you choose to have them? If you're touching everything in some decade, you're doing okay, right? You're doing a kick-ass job as a parent. You don't have to do it all in the same moment.
You talked about how you're imparting to your kids a little bit of wisdom around who they spend their time with. As a father, you are giving your daughter an example of what men will be like in her life. Is this just a woman's issue?
It's absolutely not a woman's issue because we are in an era where it's not a functional marriage anymore, right? Previous generations, you needed the legal protection of a man, right? It still is the case in parts of the world. And then maybe after that, it was you needed the financial support of a man. But nowadays, women can do it by themselves, but yet we still don't choose to. So what we want in modern marriage and modern committed relationships is self-actualization, right? This is the era of the self-actualizing partnership where you are there to help each other grow and achieve each of your individual goals. So if part of a woman's goal is to have children and have a career, well, her partner's got to be on board with that, right? Otherwise, you are kind of alienating one person and just powering through. And I think many men kind of walk away from estranged marriages feeling like somehow they were just the sperm donor or they were just the bank account. And that's a very sad place to be. And I don't think people start out intending it to be that way. But if you don't have intentional conversations and feel like you're bringing all the stakeholders in the household in, then it is alienating. You wouldn't do that at work, right? You wouldn't go up to an important meeting having not preceded the idea that you're pitching, with your stakeholders. So why would you do that with the most important stakeholder in your life, the person that's going to spend the most time? In any family, there's a fixed number of roles that need to be filled, right? Somebody needs to be the caregiver. Somebody needs to make sure there's meals on the table, the house is clean, and that there's enough money to run it all. And something that I really appreciate from the micro perspective is, this isn't my first marriage, nor my husband's first marriage, but when we found each other, what really worked was that we could both play both roles. So there was a time when I earned more, and he's a fantastic cook. I'm useless in the kitchen. I could go on business trips and he would look after, a 3-year-old, bring him on a plane, come meet me, where I was having a business trip. And I just didn't know, in my previous relationships, I hadn't met that many successful men in my circles who could also play that nurturing role. And then when things flipped, and I changed careers, leaving finance, then he stepped up. And then I was more domestic one. I would do all the, kids' school meetings and the scheduling and the after school runs, and he would focus on his career. And now he was a provider. So it really feels like a team when you can kind of tag. And not every couple has to do that, but you've got to be intentional about what role do you expect me to fill and what role do you want to fill? Are we happy with that deal, right? My best friend from Singapore, she's a stay-at-home mom, highly educated, but she and her husband made that deal and they're very happy. They have 4 children and they've provided in the way that they want. And then if we pull up from the microcosm of the family and the couple, it's really about policy too, right? Society sets the tone for what is normal. Society normalizes what you go home and gripe about to your husband or what you accept is the lot. And I, really commend Singapore government. I think we're changing paternity leave, right? Absolutely, the amount of leave that we give parents to bond with their children sets the template for the role that they play. So if you're a man, you only get 3 weeks to be home with your baby. Of course you don't know how to change the diapers as well as your wife does because she's there for 4 months, right? Of course you don't know how to feed and wean and do all this stuff. And that's not an individual choice. That's also a social choice for you. I remember in my 20s, something that made a deep impression. I went to Sweden to attend a friend's bachelorette party. And for the party game, we didn't go out to a club and get drunk. We had a member of parliament of the Feminist Party come speak with us. And her big legislative push that year was requiring Sweden, which had 1 year parental leave for each parent, but it was fungible. So often the men would give it up so that the women could stay home for 2 years, which sounded nice. But when you look at divorce rates being 50% and each absence from the workplace changes your income, lifetime income and promotion trajectory, it wasn't a great system, right? So she was lobbying for it to be mandatory that men have the year and women have the year. From the perspective of family and children, wow, what a gift for a son to bond with his father in that way for a year. For that husband, for that dad to feel empowered for the rest of his life that he knows how to do this thing as well as his wife does. I think a lot of men actually have that desire, but socially, in a Chinese household, the aunties would be like, oh, that's not your job, don't do it. Right? So you're getting all this messaging and it does affect how you show up and, the roles that you get to play.
Judith Butler, in a book that I often think of called Gender Trouble, talked about the normalization of different behaviors for boys and girls. You're already establishing for both of them what are the acceptable things that they're interested in, they talk about that they do. And when you talk about being able to trade roles with your husband, I think it's quite phenomenal that you're able to do that. And it's very important for us to get out of a traditional idea of what men should be doing. Why can't the man be doing the washing up?
And yet you still have a lot of that, right? In Singapore, I have a lot of couples where the husband is like, I want to do this, but there's so many women, older women around that are like pushing me out, right? The minute the baby needs something, they're like, oh, we'll take him because you don't know how to do that.
This idea that in Singapore, we've got feminism or we don't need feminism because there's plenty of women leaders and everything's fine, so there's no need for it, really. What are your thoughts on that sort of line of thinking?
I go very narrow on my personal experience of trying to have it all. I had kids a little bit late and there was IVF. And heading into IVF, it was like, oh, it's medicalized. It's so precise. There's a day and then there's all these scans and the doctor puts the embryo in me. So boom, we're going to have a baby. Yeah, you can have that. But what nobody prepares you for is the stress, the emotional toll, the inevitable inequity, because we are biologically different, right? I may love my spouse deeply, but there are some functions that I will serve more naturally than him. So the devil is in the details. And I think when we say we've solved feminism, we're missing all the detail. And from a mental health perspective, right, that's my profession, expectation is the root of many points of suffering. So I love going out, talking, educating women, educating men, educating couples on these are the things you might face. Because when we expect that something might be a little bit hard, and it is hard, we are okay. But when we expect that it's going to be smooth sailing, just like in the movies, everything works out, click, then that is where we get depressed. Because in Singapore, we also have this very traditional culture of people don't like to air out their dirty laundry, right? In many other Asian societies, I've seen that a woman will go to her best girlfriend and talk about maybe marital trouble or things that aren't going well. But I've noticed that in Singapore, women are very reluctant to even go to their best friend and say things aren't perfect. Sociologically, I don't know the origin of that, but I've noticed that. And that isolation of it didn't turn out as easily as I thought it would be, and I'm suffering in silence. There's no one I can talk to. I must be the only one doing it wrong. That creates a lot of the suffering. A lot of my couples struggle with this, where the woman is resentful and the husband doesn't kind of get, why don't you like me anymore, right? It's an unfortunate, a lot of people say this, right? We had kids and now my wife doesn't even really like me. I'm just the meal ticket, right? And it's not the fault of the woman, it's not the fault of the man, but it's really a process of mutual education. And the framework that I use with a lot of my couples in that space is when we look at caregiving for children or household, we think on execution terms. Who is doing the task? And I often say the best husband is doing 49% of the task. But what are the other buckets of work that are still falling on women? And it's the planning and the conceptualization. So what is conceptualization? The kids are going to outgrow their shoes. Who's going to order the shoes? And then, oh, they've got a school play. They have to wear shoes of a certain color. If I order in a Lazada now, is it going to arrive on time? And so when we say mother's mental load, it's not just a trite phrase. It is actually a quantifiable amount of labor that men are not privy to. And I think we can educate each other so that we are true partners on this. You know, it took me like 5 years to get my husband on board to be like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, is at most doing 49% of the execution. I don't know how to do it, right? There was no formula when I was growing up. So I'm researching the best formula at night when you're, just passed out sleeping, right? Like, I don't know how to sleep train because my parents co-slept all in one giant bed, right? That's traditional Chinese communal living. So all of these things are new to me too. Don't look to me as if I should know. And where the wives, I think, aren't doing the marriage or themselves a service is once you acquire the knowledge of through the conceptualization and the planning, don't keep it to yourself. I know it's more efficient to just do it. I know it's hard to train somebody up. But at work, you learn to be a true leader means to stop executing, but to start delegating. If you don't delegate, your husband will never catch up. And if you don't delegate, he will also feel totally left out and unempowered as a parent, right? So it is both partners' jobs to make sure that everybody can participate in women's labor.
How do you think we should talk about feminism nowadays? And also, what should its function be? If we have this thing, if we say that there's a movement for women to be alleviated, uplifted of some of the pressures or some of the negativities that society has applied, where does feminism come in? Can the word be redeemed, or is it something else?
At a micro level, everyone I talk to, because feminism does feel like, oh, rah, rah, let me burn my bra and I bash men, right? I love men. I love my husband deeply. So when I talk about it, I always say, is it feminism or is it just humanism? And feminism to me means choice. I always preface my personal conversations like that, right? I don't want anyone to have a preconception of what a feminist is. Am I militant? Am I aggressive? Am I this? Am I that? Feminism, I would say, is choice. So what is your choice? What would you like to be able to choose?
What can corporate environments do better, do you think, to sincerely support women on return to work or during pregnancy? How involved need they be as opposed to policy?
I think the more enlightened companies, right? I'm thinking about the tech companies and, even the big banks. The bigger employers have done a pretty good job, if I'm cynical about it, of checking the box, right? Now we have this leave, we have this benefit, you can avail of that. But the real difference, I think, is made in the softer everyday actions. For example, if you're in a company or in an industry where FaceTime and socializing with your superiors is important, when are you setting those times as a company? If you're always organizing retreats, at a time that's prime, family time, or organizing drinks and that's where the real stuff happens and it's school pickup time, then you're discriminating against whoever is the primary caregiver in the home environment. The other soft thing in the workplace is talk about family life. I think it was 2014 when Apple and Facebook first introduced egg freezing benefits for employees. That was like, wow, we saw feminism, nobody needs to trade off between their career and having kids anymore. Exactly.
Job done, we can move on. Next issue, please.
At that same time, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and she made a point to tell her staff, if you are leaving work early to go pick up your kid or cook dinner, please don't hide that fact. If you talk about it, we can stop pretending that you are all just robots coming here, just working, right? And so she encouraged the women to do it, and I say now, can we encourage the male leaders to do it, right? Talk about it. Oh, I'm going home, it's my son's birthday. Or, my wife's working late tonight, it's my turn to pick up the kids. If we talk about it, then that, I think, maybe even speaks as much or more than having a policy and a box that you check. Because people might have those leave days, but they might be afraid to take it because they don't know what the work culture really is going to say about them. But if, as a senior leader, you can set the tone by making it normal to talk about the fact that you have a family life and that you're willing to take time out from work to attend to your family duties, that kind of levels the playing field for all, right?
Well, you still see men in a corporate environment, in an office environment, use sexist or vulgar or even abusive language around or to female colleagues. It seems that obviously there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. My reaction usually is to kick off and ask them why they're speaking like that. What role do you think men need to take in the office to create a more wholesome or even just a more respectful environment?
Absolutely, by doing what you're doing and by doing what all the men here are doing, right? Which is showing up to an event where it's a women's issue. Last week I gave a talk on kind of juggling your fertility family planning with your career planning at Stripe, very forward-thinking company, but everybody in attendance was a woman, right? What if your male leader saw that and said, let me set the tone by showing up, because family planning isn't one person doing, right? It's two people deciding to do that. So speak up when you think something isn't right, and also show up. All my life, 43 years, I thought men were posturing for women, right? That's kind of the story that we're told. It's evolutionary. If you have a fancy car, you have a lot of money, women will...
It's peacocking.
Exactly.
Yes.
But last year, I read, men are not peacocking for women. They're peacocking for other men to be the alpha. So can we change that? Can we change the peacock feathers? Like, it's actually showing up for my kid and talking about my kid and not, being like, oh, whatever, that's so girly, that's so pansy. Yeah. And my husband kind of drove the point home to me too, right? I was asking him, what do you think? Do men want to see a male therapist or a female therapist? And he said, hell no, I don't want to see a male therapist, right? That's me being weak in front of another man. I'd much rather go to a woman because it's okay for me to be vulnerable in front of a woman. I was like, wow. Inside, men are trying to impress other men. So let's change the rules of the impressing game.